who's your target audience and what's your end goal? Let's say it's like early stage startups, yeah? Founders at early stage startups. Okay, cool. So they're your target audience. Your end goal is to obviously win business off them. Okay, cool. Then you need to reverse engineer that to come back to what are you going to put out there to reach your end goal? How are you going to engage these people? Yeah, sure. So I'm David Rolls. I've got 7 years of recruitment experience, and what I've been doing over the last 10 months or so is I've transitioned into a freelance business development coach and trainer for recruitment companies. Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people, I sort of fell into recruitment. So, because you hear that a lot, no one dreams of being a recruiter when they're a kid, right? Basically what happened with me was I had a few years experience in sales, and I ended up going backpacking around Southeast Asia. I did that for about 3 months, and then I came home, basically didn't have any money, and I was approached by someone to come join their recruitment company. I hadn't heard of a recruitment really, apart from obviously because I always considered recruitment like HR, and I just didn't know anything about it, but the money was decent enough for me at the time, so I figured I'd just give it a go. And yeah, and then 7 years later, I was still in it. So it was just, I suppose the reason really was it was something different. It required sales skills, but the earning potential was far more than what you can achieve elsewhere, even in some sales roles. And you're not selling a product, you're actually selling people. So if you're a people person like I am, the thought of just being paid to talk to people all day sounded great at the time. Yeah, I mean, the reason I do what I do, to be honest with you, is I feel like the recruitment industry's got a long way to go. And the reputation of recruiters and the recruitment industry generally is not great, coming from current recruiters, ex-recruiters, candidates, clients. Like you say, the way I always put it is, if you run into someone at, say, a barbecue and you say I'm a recruiter, they sort of go, oh really? So it's not got a great reputation, and not only just in the UK, it seems to be globally. I speak to directors and agencies across the world, and everyone has the same reaction to that. So in terms of the challenges, I mean, the main one I focus on really is the quality of clients that recruiters have, and recruiters having their time wasted. So I think at the moment a really good fill rate for roles is about 40%. So that means 60% of your time, if you're good and I'm talking about permanent contingent recruitment, but that means 60% of your time is being wasted. And I've seen it myself. I've seen colleagues, members of my team, break down emotionally because they've spent weeks of their time and weeks of their energy trying to fill a role, only to have it pulled or filled by another agency or filled internally or whatever. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have, because it's very emotionally testing for recruiters to go through that roller coaster. And coming up through recruitment, I was always told that it was just part and parcel of being a recruiter, having your time wasted. It's recruitment, it's a roller coaster. But I just don't feel like that's the way forward, and there's definitely ways that we can mitigate that and make recruitment an enjoyable job. It doesn't have to be an emotionally exhausting role. It's hard to say it's evolved. I mean, it's always been, it's one of the biggest skills you can have, right? Yeah, empathy, emotional intelligence in selling and recruitment. So I wouldn't say it's evolved or the importance has evolved, but what I would say is, with the birth of, and well, I say the birth was in the 90s, but with the evolution of the internet and social media and platforms like TikTok and YouTube, which has given people access to like free training, people are more aware of what they need to do to like evolve as a recruiter. And there's also this movement of, you know, personal development over the last 10 or 15 years or so, which has sort of made it cool. You know, if you said sort of self-help and personal development 20-25 years ago, and this is probably in correlation with, you know, the whole mental health movement as well, but people would sort of look at you like there's something wrong with you. Like if you're reading up about, you know, how to be more empathetic, or you know, how to sort your life out, they probably think that, you know, you need therapy, or do you need to be, you know, need to be on some sort of medication. But now it's like cool to be reading those types of books, and I think people are more encouraged to seek out that sort of knowledge and then evolve their skill around these subjects like empathy and emotional intelligence. Yeah, I tell you what, it's probably easier for me to answer this by telling you my own story of why I even started doing this in the first place. So basically, it was just before COVID. I remember that, and I just had my best month ever. So I think I filled like 5 software engineering roles for 2 or 3 new clients I picked up in London. And the market was pretty tough then because of the whole uncertainty of, you know, Brexit and whatever. Little did we know COVID was just around the corner to make things even more fun. But yeah, I just had my best ever month. I think I did like 36,000 or something, and I was pretty happy with that. But to make those 5 or 6 placements, I had to work like 11 or 12 roles, and that was a good fill rate as well. Like I said earlier, it's 40% is good for a recruiter. So I just sort of had this moment where I was a bit like, there must be a better way to do this. Like, surely you don't have to just accept that over half of your time is going to be wasted through, you know, no fault of your own. And there's so many different factors that, I mean, you know, getting beaten by one other agency is one thing, but, you know, having the role pulled because, you know, an investor has decided that the company can no longer recruit or whatever, that's another thing, and that is, you know, completely out of your control. So I started looking into retained recruitment. I don't really like using the R word anymore, to be honest with you, because I feel like it's got like a stigma around it. Like, people think, when you say retained, people think exec search, you know, suit and tie, corporate recruitment, and then they'll think of like lawyers and stuff like, you know, the Netflix show Suits. So I don't really like using that word anymore. But anyway, yeah, I started looking around for a good while of sort of how we can, you know, guarantee our fee and not have our time wasted. And then with that, and I learned this over the next few years as I sort of evolved how to sell it and, you know, work with my colleagues and a few other people within the industry to build a product. But it allows you to do a much better job as a recruiter. And it's something I'm super passionate about, because one of the main problems, as I mentioned, is lots of recruiters drop out of the industry because they get their time wasted all the time. You know, they work really hard on rubbish roles, and then their time's wasted and their energy's wasted. And, you know, it's very easy, if you have a bad run of luck, it's very easy to go 2 or 3 months without making any money in recruitment, even though you've worked the hardest in the office. And I hated that. And I hated the fact that it was normal for me to have my time wasted. So there's many reasons that I'm very passionate about companies moving over to a model where, you know, they're getting paid a fee up front, so they're not having their time wasted, and the company's guaranteeing their fee and the consultant's guaranteeing their commission. So even if they do get, you know, their time wasted and the role's pulled, they're still getting paid something. You know, it might not be the whole fee, but they're still getting paid something. And, you know, money aside, let's not talk about commission and fees anymore. It allows you to implement a far better service, because when you've got that fee up front, that commitment fee, rather than calling it a retainer, I'd rather just call it a commitment fee, because that's essentially what it is. It's the company's way to show you that they're not going to waste their time, or at least they're not planning to. And a lot of companies often do plan to waste your time, because for whatever reason they want to get market knowledge or whatever. But you're able to offer so many more tangible services that you're just simply not able to offer unless you've got that commitment fee. So one thing I talk about quite a lot is, and I've got it, I mention it quite a lot in my ebook as well, but I speak to people about this, is exclusive candidates, for example. That's a really good service that you can actually offer, and this solves a lot of problems for prospects. So you can't offer this as a contingent recruiter because, again, you don't have the commitment, and recruiters, what they have to do is they have to maximize their chance of placing that candidate. They don't care who they place it with. They don't care if it's client A, client B, client C, or even clients that don't currently work with. But they need to maximize their chance of placing it because that candidate's obviously also working with other agencies and probably applying directly and whatever, right? So they need to maximize their chance of actually getting paid for their time. But the problem that comes up with clients when they work with, I say companies, hiring companies, when they work with contingent recruiters, is they're often working with recruiters who are actually convincing the candidates not to join them in a lot of times because they've got conflicting interests. If 3 of their clients offer the same candidate, well, who does the recruiter favor? And it's not fair on the hiring companies, because oftentimes as well they've worked exclusively with with a recruiter only to find out, or not find out, but this does happen, that the recruiter is actually maybe convinced the candidate to join someone else, but also the recruiter is not able to do a proper job because their time is constantly split between 4, 5, 6, 7 agencies and their companies, and it doesn't allow you as a recruiter to do a good job because there's always that urgency that the role is going to get filled internally by the hiring company or get filled by another agency, or the role is going to be pulled, and you've always got this sense of not loss, but fear of loss, I suppose, that the role is going to be pulled and you have your time wasted, so you're never able to fully commit unless you get that commitment fee. Yeah, I mean, it was because I wrote it. I'd only set up my consulting and training business a few months before, and I wrote it at the start of this year because I wanted to get my thoughts on paper, because I knew what my thoughts, and when I talk about it I can explain it because I'm passionate about it, but I felt like I needed to get it down on paper so I could read it myself and then see also where maybe there was kinks in my opinion or kinks in my strategy. So I wanted to be able to fix those as well. So, and it's much easier to review your own work when you've actually written down your thoughts. So that was the initial reason I did it. But the main reason, to be honest with you, is the fact that the reality is recruitment is hard at the best of times. At the moment, it's super hard. Business development is super hard. Recruiters aren't generally very good at business development. A lot of them will tell you they are, but they're not. And I wasn't as well, by the way, even though I had a sales background. Sales is really hard to learn. Very, very hard. People always say, I post videos on TikTok and other social media platforms, and you do get lots of people who aren't recruiters saying how easy recruitment is. All you do is post a job ad and you wait for the applications, blah, 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 which obviously we know isn't true. But I always say that human communication itself is very difficult. How many people have you met who just can't communicate with humans very well, let alone sell them a product or a service in exchange for money? So I wanted to give a free resource to people, especially those who like setting up their own business, and they don't have a training budget, but they really want to learn how to get paid up front, how to have a more stable business, how to have more flexible working hours and better clients. And this way they can, it's the way I sort of can consider it is 10 or 15% of the course I teach. And it's enough to get you started, because I don't know if you've ever downloaded free ebooks for something you're interested in, but oftentimes, in fact, most of the time, it's just a sales magnet that you sort of read it and you go, well, that was kind of interesting, but it was just sort of selling a course, or trying to encourage you to buy their product or something. And it's like, well, it would have been nice if you gave me some value rather than this fluffy, vague stuff. So yeah, I wanted to make sure they actually had some tangible value in it, stuff that people can actually go away and action on today to improve their business for free. And yeah, and then basically, you know, the whole goal is really, the whole goal on what I do. Obviously, I run a consulting and training business, so, you know, I've got rent to pay. I need to make money, of course, but at the same time, the whole reason I do all of this, and one of the main reasons I made this free ebook, and I've gone on to create, you know, tons of more free resources as well. It's all with the goal of improving the recruitment industry. And I do genuinely believe that if recruitment companies start getting paid up front and implementing a product with tangible, valuable services that will actually improve the recruitment process for them, for the recruiters, and also for the hiring companies and the candidates as well, by the way, you know, over the next few years, recruitment will stop being this frustrating, icky word, and it will become like a much easier process for everyone involved, where, you know, people don't look down on it as an industry or see it as a necessary evil. What prompted me, to be totally honest with you, and you can probably judge by the name, but so I love podcasts, first of all. I've been listening to loads, especially during COVID. I got really into them in COVID. I think most people did. But my favorite podcast is the Joe Rogan Experience. And I was doing a podcast. I did a podcast in my last role. It was like a tech focused podcast, and, you know, it was fun, but I'm not like massively passionate about, you know, learning about the latest AI techniques and stuff. I'm not a software engineer. So as much as I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed talking to people and meeting, you know, smart, intelligent, or interesting people, it was never like fully me, and it was too specific to allow other guests to come on that, you know, within like different categories or niches or whatever. So I was actually listening to the Joe Rogan Experience a couple months before I set it up, and he actually said in the podcast, he said, you know, we're the number one podcast in the world. All we do is just get people that I want to speak to on, and, you know, they could be authors, they could be directors, they can be singers, actors, whatever, and I just have conversations with them. I don't interview them, I just have conversations with them, casual conversations, and, you know, it allows people to showcase their real personality as opposed to sort of, you know, just answering questions like they do on TV or whatever. But he also said, like, I don't understand why people haven't just copied this. You know, why haven't people even just copied the name? So I just thought I'd do that. And yeah, it's been interesting. You know, it's been fun. It's just a fun thing to do. It's more of a passion project at this point. If it grows, it grows. You know, it's one of those things. But I've already had some interesting people on. You know, for example, I've had 2 TikTok influencers on recently who've got like a combined following of like 600,000-700,000 followers. You know, they've had millions and millions and millions of views. One of them is a TikTok coach who like helps companies and individuals grow their TikToks, but also the other one is a TikTok comedian, and he's had tons of viral videos. But I wouldn't say I've got like a specific moment, to be honest, that's sort of my favorite. It's more just what's been interesting is when you have a platform that people can actually come on and talk about themselves and promote their own stuff, it's very interesting to see who you then have access to in terms of like having conversations with, because, you know, a lot of these people, if you DM'd them, you know, you're one of potentially thousands DMing them. But when you've got a platform where you can actually allow them to, you know, you're essentially providing value to them in a way, right? You're providing value. So when you're able to provide value to people, it's interesting to see how people then respond to you. And, you know, it's great for networking as well. You know, you're giving them a platform to talk about themselves. You're helping them promote their services, and in return, you know, it's a really good way to build business relationships, or even just ways to, you know, to make new friends as well, with people who are on the same wavelength as you, chasing success, etc. Yeah, massively. So basically what happened was, I've always been interested in social media. I've always been a bit addicted to it, if I'm honest. Even going back to when like Facebook first came out, I remember being like quite a slow adopter, and I remember getting the email because we were using, I don't know if you guys had it, but we had something called Bebo, and it was like sort of like MySpace but a bit more customizable. Like anyone in the UK used Bebo, and it was fun. It was very fun for us like teenagers at the time in the mid 2000s. I remember getting the emails like saying, "Oh, join Facebook. It's this new social media app." And it took me ages to join because I was like, "No, I want to stay on Bebo." But then I joined Facebook, got completely addicted to it, and then had to like pull myself away from it, which I tend to do. But I've always been quite naturally decent at building social media platforms. Like for example, on Twitter, I built a following in the early 2010s within like the football space, and I've still got that account. That's at like 14,000 followers, which was a big deal back then, but not so much anymore. And I've always been interested in like how you build audiences. But what happened was basically at my last employer, they put us through a personal branding course with a company called Hoxo. And yeah, Hoxo are like, I think they're like number one or maybe number two or whatever. Imagine number one. Let's call them number one personal branding agency in the UK, run by a guy called Sean Anderson who has a recruitment podcast. And yeah, it was really good. It was really interesting. What it did really, to be honest with you, is it wasn't so much about teaching me new stuff, but it was sort of more about vindicating my opinion of what I should post and how I should post it, how I should split it, personal, credible content, and value add content. And it's stuff that I sort of knew because the concepts are very similar for every social media platform anyway. But it gave me like a guidance of what to do on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's a funny social media platform really, because your clients are on there and you're not anonymous.
Yep.
So you've got to be a little bit careful around what you post, and there could be repercussions. You could lose a client, you could even lose your job, But for me, it's like when I started posting on LinkedIn, yes, did I win some clients? Yes, and I built some really good relationships on there, but it was also a very interesting way for me to sort of understand how many people agreed with my point of view on recruitment, on business development, etc. And then I started learning quite a lot as well. So I started learning from other people. I met some really interesting people who connected with me because they liked my post. And the good thing about LinkedIn at the moment for recruiters who actually do post is, I think it's only like 1% of recruiters, I think it's only like 1% of users actually post on LinkedIn regularly, like once a week. It's a very, very small. So the bar's so low that if you just start doing it, you're already like in the top 1%. I wouldn't say I've seen any like quirky, because it's I don't really think of like marketing within recruitment and like building a brand within recruitment as like a one-off post that goes viral, or like you said, like a weird or quirky technique that sort of works. But if it's, the thing is about quirky stuff as well, if you're consistently doing it, it's no longer quirky anymore, it's just standard. So I haven't really seen anything like that work. I mean, the marketing techniques I have seen that work really well for recruiters is posting, just focusing on value and being able to showcase how and why you're credible as a recruiter. Because it can be quite difficult, right? Like most recruiters, their main selling point, and this is sort of going back to the whole, retainer productizing your service thing, but most of recruiters, they don't have a product to sell. They only have candidates. And as soon as you take the candidate away, well, they sort of sell you on loose, vague promises like, oh, we'll get you candidates within 72 hours. How do you know that? How can you possibly know? You're just like making stuff up. You're just hoping, and you're just saying stuff, and then you'll work really hard to try and get candidates within 72 hours, but you're not a fortune teller. You can't predict the future. What if the candidate market's really difficult at the moment? So they always sound like vague stuff, or we've got 25 years combined experience. Okay, that could be 25 years of being a terrible recruiter. It means nothing to me. It's not tangible. So you can't market on that. I think what you can do is, people like free stuff, people like free guides. How can you provide value to your prospects, right? So if you're working with early stage startups, right? So the way I always put it is, you need to consider your end goal first. What's your end goal? What's the whole point you're doing this? Because you're not doing it for a laugh. You're doing it for business at the end of the day. So who's your target audience and what's your end goal? Let's say it's like early stage startups, yeah? Founders at early stage startups. Okay, cool. So they're your target audience. Your end goal is to obviously win business off them. Okay, cool. Then you need to reverse engineer that to come back to what are you going to put out there to reach your end goal? How are you going to engage these people? Who's your target audience and how are you going to engage them? And how can you bring value to their lives and into the business as well? Well, what you could do, for example, is you could write a free guide on how to interview candidates, or you could provide some free information around, or like a step-by-step guide on, how to attract candidates, or how to write better emails, or how to create better messaging sequences. Because generally what people do is when you're providing them value, they'll work with you because they want more of that. And you've already provided them value and they haven't paid for it, so they're very happy to pay you for more, or an evolution of the topic that you've shared. And most people have this fear of and I used to as well, by the way, but they have this fear of giving away too much. Like, they don't want to give away too much free stuff because they're like, well, they wouldn't pay me then. But this is the thing, they will. Because human psychology and the natural human reaction is, if you give someone something amazing for free, then they're going to always assume that the paid stuff is even better. Like, someone said to me, I got really into Alex Hormozi's stuff over the last year or so. I've got his book over there, the $100 Million Offers. It's a really good book about building value. But he makes a really good point, because our natural reaction to expensive things is, oh, it must be good then. And someone said this to me. There was like a business development course one of my clients mentioned to me a few months ago. And he said, oh yeah, have you seen this course? And I was like, oh, I'm not really sure about it. I don't know if it's any good. And he goes, yeah, but it's £10,000, so it must be good. And I was like, why must it be good? And it was really interesting, because I was like, oh yeah, that is actually how people think. So the marketing techniques that I think work is giving away free stuff, giving away as much value as possible as you can without it being ridiculous. Obviously, you can't give everything away for free. Like, you can't actually go out and recruit for people for free, obviously. But you can give them advice, and you can teach them how to do it, because what they'll do is they'll see that you're credible. They'll see that you actually know what you're talking about. And even if you give people all the tools, they haven't got time to do it themselves. Like, I could write a step-by-step recruitment book for startups, and around talent attraction or whatever. They might read it and they'll go, oh, this is good stuff. I haven't got time to do it though. I still need to hire someone to do it. David's just given us a free book. He clearly knows what he's talking about. I'll probably hire him then, I guess. So that's how it works. And another way as well is with recruiters specifically. One of my friends, Simon Monahan, who actually had on my podcast a few weeks ago, he's got a very interesting story. But what he does is he posts very, very good job ads. And he takes the time to write really, really good job ads, right? And that is such a simple way to showcase that you're a good recruiter. I think it's Mitch Sullivan, the copywriter on LinkedIn. I followed him for years. He always says, the easiest way to see how good a recruitment agency is to check their job ads, because if they're not putting any effort into their job ad to actually sell you guys, how much effort are they actually putting in with the search and the pitch and everything? All the time. To be honest with you, it's it gets easier, but you never fully get over it, especially if you've built a relationship with that candidate. Like I did a post about this on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, actually, but recruiters, most recruiters actually really do care about their candidates, and they really do care about the candidate getting the job. And it really can ruin your week. Like, honestly, I've worked with some candidates for, you get to know these people for like weeks on end sometimes. Sometimes you're working with a candidate for like 6 weeks. It's a long time to be speaking to them, and you might be speaking to them like, several times a week over WhatsApp or over a phone call or even a video call. And, some candidates have become friends of mine as well, right? Over the years. So to answer your question, yeah, for sure. It's numerous times, dozens of times. There's been times when I'm really, not even just for me, because, sometimes it's not even about filling the role or getting the commission. You might have had 2 or 3 candidates in the process. One of them gets it, great. But, Steve, who really wanted the job and it's his dream job, and he wanted it a bit more than the others, you could tell, doesn't get it. And then you feel really bad. You're getting paid no matter what, but you still feel really bad. And then, what many recruiters then do is they'll then put in extra hours to try and find that candidate that they got really well with a similar or better job to sort of make up for it, even though it's not your fault. But you do get emotionally invested in candidates for sure. Well, I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask, if I'm totally honest, because for my first few years, the thing is, it's a difficult one, really, because if you're super driven, you're super entrepreneurial, and you're new to recruitment, it's very time consuming. And it's very difficult to accelerate your career or accelerate the progression of your career at a rate that you're happy with whilst working like, a 9 to 5. Because it's one of those jobs where it's like, there's never enough time in the day. There's always more stuff to do, always. And you do have to get to a point where you realize that you're never going to get everything done. Never, ever, ever. So one of my favorite productivity books is a book called Deep Work, and I also learned something very important as well in a book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. So I learned about the I think it's called the Eisenhower Matrix, because it's one of the old US presidents. That's how he used to organize his day. But one thing that I found really, really useful was segmenting your day into 4 different quadrants. So you've got urgent and important, not urgent and important, urgent and not important, not important and not urgent. And you actually want to, because I always thought you wanted to spend your time in the urgent and important section, because stuff that needs to get done now and it's important. But actually what you want to do is you want to spend most of your time on non-urgent important tasks. And there's a reason for that, because basically the urgent and important stuff used to be in the non-urgent and important stuff, but you've not been organized enough to keep it there, so it's now moved over to the urgent stuff. But then it's all about structuring your day, right? So you want to get the urgent important stuff done first, say from 8:30 till 10, and then you want to spend as much as your time over here, like building relationships, doing stuff that isn't urgent yet, so you're able to put the quality behind it. Stay out of this quadrant, which is obviously not urgent, not important. That's stuff that you can do after work, but oftentimes people waste time Googling stuff, looking up movies, looking up video games, whatever. I'm not perfect, by the way, because it's so easy nowadays to just jump on TikTok or jump on Google and start looking up stuff. But if you just write it down, it's out of your brain and you can just think about it later. So that's like a really important productivity tool that I use, and I still use it now. Another thing as well is working in blocks, so time blocks. So for smaller tasks, I always use the Pomodoro technique, which is I used to do 20 minutes on one task, 5-minute break. Taking regular breaks is so important. I learned this sort of towards the end of my career in recruitment, because I never used to do it. I used to just work until I was tired, and then I'd go sort of take a break when I was tired, but then it's too late anyway. because I learned in the book Deep Work about how attention is a finite resource, and the longer you work on something, your productivity drops and drops and drops to a point, and then it needs time to recover. And I never thought of it like that until I read that book. So working in like focused sprints of 20 minutes, 5-minute break, 45 minutes, 15-minute break. And that, by the way, the longer you work in a row, the longer the break needs to be. Because what a lot of people do is they'll do like hour 5-minute break, hour 5-minute break. No, it needs to be like 15, 20, 25-minute break for you to recover, to then go back. So taking breaks for sure. And also, once you get to a point where you have set everything up, you've done the initial, foundational work, which can take you a fair few months, to be honest. But once that's sort of running now, and it's sort of running on rails, and maybe you've automated stuff, or you've come up with processes and forms, scripts and templates, one thing you can do as well is like have a shutdown routine. So say, for example, at 5 o'clock every day, you have a routine which goes on for about a couple of minutes, and you check your emails, shut your emails down, whatever. But you have a specific routine which you then start to associate with ending work, and then that's done. And then you forget about it, and then you switch off for the evening. Because again, this is something that took me a while to sort of implement and see the value of, but you are going to burn out if you don't take time off. You will lose interest, you will lose motivation, and then burnout can get really ugly, to be honest. So you want to think of it as like as your career, as like a marathon and not a sprint. Because though, yes, there's people who are achieving amazing things in a short period of time, they're gonna, in 2-3 years, they might be completely burned out and need a couple of years off and might drop out, whereas you're still steadily chipping away, and then in 5 years' time, you'll be in a better situation than they were